Today, I have the lovely Tracy Bingaman on the Awaken Feminine podcast. Tracy is joining me all the way from Pennsylvania, USA. Welcome to the show.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm excited for our conversation because it's something what we're talking about is very near and dear to my heart as well. So I'm sure our conversation will be amazing. But before we get started, do you mind sharing with our audience who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm Tracy Bingaman. I describe myself as a multi-passionate woman on a quest to help other women, specifically other physician assistants, figure out what they're worth. I will talk a little bit more later about my journey through burnout and leaving the career that meant so much to me in the way that I thought it had to be done. But now I coach other PAs to manage their most limited resources well. So time, money, and energy, and making sure that we're protecting those things, making sure that we're using them for the things that truly matter to us in life, and just trying to have this abundance mindset with those, but also guarding them because it's easy for other people to try to steal them.
I love what you do, and I'm excited for our conversation, as I said before. But before we dive in, I really love for you to give us your definition of an awakened feminine.
Goodness. I mean, when I hear the phrase an awakened feminine, I think to me, an awakened woman is someone who knows what she is worth, does not doubt that, does not feel guilty about that, doesn't feel the need to downplay that depending on who she's around, and isn't afraid to stand her ground, whether that's in a negotiation or in her relationship or in the way that she shows up in the world with her friends. This is just someone who has done the work to really figure out, like, I am by myself, not because of the roles that I play to other people in this world, valuable and worthy. And that's enough. I don't have to qualify it at all.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Sure.
Now we are going to dive into our conversation. So today we wanted to touch on three things. The first one being leaving, your career to
Mm-hmm.
pursue your passions, and then creating healthier boundaries and making sure they are stay like we keep the boundaries, and also challenging limiting beliefs. So all three of those are very near and dear to my heart because we've had a chat before and our
Sure.
journeys are so similar. It's just like, whoa.
Yeah, it's
And
funny.
that's why I'm like, come on my podcast and talk about you because you're amazing. So I'll really love for you to maybe talk about a bit about why you decided to leave your career to pursue your passion because, in your introduction, you were saying you loved your career.
Yeah.
So what was the thing that made you leave? So maybe give us a bit of a journey.
Yeah, so I am by training a physician assistant, which in the US is very similar to a physician in a lot of the ways that you function. So I had dedicated my learning career to becoming a PA, and then my professional career was all about serving patients. And I was specifically a surgery PA, which comes with a set of expectations that you will have the same quality of life and the same poor boundaries as your surgeon does, but you don't get paid what they get paid, but you're still expected to be at the hospital, all hours of the day and night. So I was about 8 years into my career as a PA. And I had sort of gone down this slippery slope of when I got this job, it was 40 hours a week, then it was 45 hours a week, then it was 50 hours a week, then it was 55 hours a week. When I finally got so burned out that I decided to resign from that position, I was averaging 60 hours a week and I didn't work weekends. So I was working 12-hour days and sometimes 36 hours straight without an opportunity to really get rest because I was on call in between 12-hour days at the hospital. And I loved my patients. I loved the people that I worked with. There were so many positives about that job. But, and this was a huge but, I was never home. I was never home to see my kids. I was never home to see them in the morning. I didn't make it to bedtime. I get stuck at the hospital countless times. It was more often that I spent dinner in the hospital cafeteria, grabbing a soda and running back to take care of my patients and sitting down around the dinner table with my family, which is something that I would have told you at the time that I really valued. So it was something that was important to me. And I said that I valued, but by staying at that job every day, every week, every month that I stayed, I was really saying, I don't value this because I'm willingly showing up for a job that's not allowing me to prioritize myself and my sanity and my relationship with my family, all which things that I would have told you mattered a lot to me. But I really wasn't walking the walk. I was sort of talking the talk. These things are important, but I wasn't really prioritizing them. And a couple of things happened. I ended up pretty sick with a significant autoimmune disease that really knocked me on my butt and reminded me that like I am a human, not a robot, that I can't just keep going at this unsustainable pace and that eventually something's going to give. And for me, that was my health. And then my dear sweet daughter, I have 5 kids who range in age from 19 to 4, but at the time that this was happening, my youngest was 2. So I'd worked all day, 12 hours at the hospital, up all night, into the ER, no sleep, was on the phone transferring someone who was critically ill and needed a helicopter. My daughter's 2 and she has these purple owl footy pajamas and someone had gotten her out of her crib. She comes toddling out into the living room where I'm working on my laptop, I'm on the phone, I'm, on call. And she says, "Mama up," because keeping the sleep out of her eyes and she's so tired and she's warm and snuggly. And I say, "Honey, I can't pick you up right now. I'm working," right? It's 5 in the morning. There's absolutely no reason that I should be working at 5 in the morning. And she looks me in the eye, and because she has some older brothers who have taught her some choice words, she says, "Mama, you're stupid." And I thought, she's right. I am doing this job because I think that it matters. And it turns out that it doesn't matter at all. And I had a big old meltdown and let all of the emotions wash over me. And after some very stressful conversations with my husband, I resigned 1 week to the day after that conversation, after she told me that I was stupid. And I was terrified, but also so glad that I finally said, like, "Hey, my vote is that you guys are not doing things well, and I'm no longer willing to be subject to this."
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm like getting a bit like teary just listening, like when what your daughter said. So like all this time, how you said you valued your family and you were never there. So like your relationship also with your husband, because I think as moms, once the children come, your relationship with your husband changes. So you probably have that, plus you're working so much. How was your relationship with your husband, and how was all that balancing before you left your career?
I mean, if I saw the way that I was treating the people in my life that meant the most to me, if I saw myself doing it now, like in a play, I would be terribly embarrassed at how I was treating my family. I was saying and doing things to them that I never would have done at work because I went to work and I knew I had to be professional and on and save all the lives and do all the things and clamp all the arteries and return all the phone calls. But when I got home, I was so spent. I had left it all on the field. I had nothing left for me. Like self-care was like a curse word, absolutely positively not happening. And I would get home and my kids would be like, Mom, they would want to show me like the artwork that they did or tell me about their day. And I had nothing left. And so I just said to them, like, "Honey, I can't look at your artwork. I can't hear about recess. I can't engage with my husband," because I would get home and I was just like, completely drained. So and I've had to do a lot of healing and forgiving myself for that time that I lost. Cause like I can't get that Wednesday night 2 years ago back. But what I can do is like this Wednesday night show up differently for my family. So I am the kind of person that when you kind of realize like, oh no, I was doing this wrong. I was prioritizing the wrong things. I wasn't showing up well, that I can really get in a negative headspace about like, well, you missed it, right? You missed that year of your daughter's life. You missed that opportunity to connect with your sons. Like, nope, nothing was missed. I was right on time. I quit right when I was supposed to. And I figured out like, hey, you cannot change what you did yesterday, but you can change what you're going to do today and how you reflect on that and what you do tomorrow, which is really what matters.
I love that. That's such a great piece of advice because yeah, a lot of people live in regret,
Mm,
and that starts sucking away the energy. So the fact that you are able to heal and just remind yourself, because we do go back there, the regret and I should have done this, I should have done that.
mm,
To be able to just remind yourself when maybe you're not showing up, that day, the
sure.
best version of you, to go, okay, I can do better the next second or the next day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, every moment is an opportunity to reset the way that you're talking to yourself, the way that you're showing up in any given moment. It doesn't have to be a Monday or the first of the year or some magical thing.
Mm.
You have the power to reset your own mindset and to show up and be intentional, even if you're like, zoned out and scrolling on your phone, and then you realize you're doing it. Like in that moment, you get to choose. Am I going to continue to be checked out, or am I going to start to be engaged?
Yes, exactly. I want to ask you how your husband and your kids felt with your decision, because obviously it was like a split second. You're like, wow, I am stupid.
Yeah.
And what was your thought process like? Because within a week you resigned. So can you talk a bit about how that all kind of came about, and the feelings and the emotions and what you had to like go through to get there?
My husband was super supportive about this whole process. And when I had this like meltdown moment following my daughter saying that I was stupid, I truly was like a blubbering mess, like couldn't communicate. He got the kids out the door to school. He sort of circled back around with me. I was calming down. I was kind of able to speak. And he said, "Sweetheart, you need to resign today." And I said, "Today? I don't have time to resign today." And he was like, "There's your sign," right? Like if anyone is out there saying like, "I'm just too busy to quit," or like go to the bathroom, like that's a sign that you need to reevaluate what you're prioritizing in a day, right? Because like I needed to quit more than anything. And that was the last thing that I possibly had on my to-do list for that day. I had save all the people, attend all the meetings, check all the boxes, receive, reply to all the emails, but do what I need to do. That was not even on the list. And I'm glad I didn't quit that day, because I wanted to sort of process and make sure that I didn't quit in exhausted, tearful anger, right? I wanted to leave for the right reasons. I wanted to leave as calmly as I could. And so we took the time. And what we did during that time is two things. I had to grapple with the fact that I was willingly walking away from a job that had once really meant a lot to me and been part of my identity, a big part of my identity. Like when I introduced myself, I would see I'm a surgery PA. Like I was very proud of what I did and what I do and what I am and the work that it took to become that version of myself. So I had to reconcile the fact that like I am still a PA, even if I'm not doing this job that's trying to kill me. And
Mm-hmm.
it's okay to walk away from that. I am not defined by the letters after my name. I am not defined by the job that I do. And also during that time, my husband and I sat down and we ran worst case scenario. Like I quit and then everyone says, we're not hiring her. And it's 6 months or 12 months or 18 months with no income from me at all. Would we be okay? Because I
Yeah.
really needed to know, like, they will be fine. I'm not jeopardizing my family's financial future for making this move. And once we did that, I felt like this weight that was lifted. I was like, we've been very diligent financially. And in the last 10 years, no, we were preparing for that moment, but that's the moment that we
Mm.
needed to be financially stable. And up until that point, it had just been like icing on the cake. It was fine. And we had two incomes. Everything was going great. But when we were preparing to drop to one, I was really glad that we had spent the last 10 years diligently preparing for the unknown, because you do
Mm.
truly never know what's going to happen.
Yeah. And I think that's wonderful that you were preparing all this time and that you were able to do it, because um there might be someone listening right now who's like, well, that's great, Tracy. Like
Sure.
I'm exhausted, I'm burnt out, and I want to leave my job, but I can't freaking do it because
Yeah.
I don't have the financial ability to do it. And I know that's where you come in now with what you do. So can you talk a bit about what you do and how you help women, or no, it's not women, it's other PAs to
Sure.
actually
Yeah.
be protective of their time and financials and, all the things?
Yeah, so my dream is for every PA to be completely work optional, for it to be financially free, and for if they're showing up in a clinic or an operating room or an ER, for it to be because they want to be there, for it to be because they want to take care of patients, not because they're desperate and they need a paycheck. Because when you're desperate and you need a paycheck, the healthcare system, particularly in the US, but I think in other parts of the world as well, it will take advantage of you. It will just, suck more and more and more and offer you like this carrot of overtime and this carrot of double pay and this carrot of night shift. And you're vulnerable to that when you're in a situation where you need more money. And so when we talk about money specifically and one-on-one coaching, we talk about managing your lifestyle so that you have excess. And with that excess, you can pay off debt, you can save for college, you can make an FU fund. So if you're ever in a situation where you need to say FU, you can afford to do it and walk away. Because if your kid gets sick or your parent is failing and you have to step away from work, I want the decision to be like, how soon can I walk away? Not how can, or what if, or I wonder if I can afford to walk away, because those things happen. And I want everyone to be able to walk away from a toxic boss, a situation where the healthcare system is making you physically ill, is morally injuring you, or you just don't agree with the values of the organization that you're working at. All of those situations will come up when you're working in healthcare, and getting your finances in order give you the power to walk away. They give you the power to be in control of the situation, not a victim in your own life.
I just love, 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 love what you do, because I see so many people. I used to work, I used to be a pharmacist. Well, like you say, I'm still a pharmacist. I'm just not a
Yeah.
practicing pharmacist.
Yeah.
And like you, I had to go through that grieving process of losing that part of me as my identity, because that's what I identified as when I introduced myself to people.
Yep.
And just thinking about work, and actually I went back to visit my colleagues a couple of on mid December, so exactly a month ago. And I walked in, I saw some people, I caught up with some people, and you obviously think of other people that you haven't seen, and you go, wow, everyone is stuck in this loop.
Mm.
And there's people that hate being there. Like they would, if they had the opportunity, they would just walk out, but they can't. So what the work that you do is so important. I love the FU fund. It's so important because,
yeah,
just seeing that, going back even just a month ago, it was like, wow, people need all the help that they can get. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think you should expand it to not just PA, you should be just healthcare workers in general.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do. I think it's a system that it sort of brainwashes us. Like you get into it because you want to help patients. And then you end up in this mindset like, well, I did this because I want to take care of other people. And what you're not saying, but what you're really, thinking or is being told to you or you have learned through your training is, I want to take care of other people. And I'm willing to do that at the expense of my own health or at the expense of my own finances or at the expense of my own relationship with my family. And when you say it out loud, it's sort of like this, like, uh-oh, like, am I actually willing to do it at the cost of my relationship with my family? Because when you say it out loud, you're like, I don't like, I don't love this job. It's not going to love me back. Like the healthcare system is not coming to my funeral, right? Like it's not going to care. Like they would step over my still warm, dying body to replace me with someone else who can make money for them. And it's terrible to think about, but it's also a truth. And, your kids would really miss you if tomorrow you ceased to exist. But your job would have a posting by noon, right? They would just be like, we'll get another one, right? We can get another Tracy. My kids cannot get another mom.
Yeah, exactly. And I think sometimes when you're in the system, you think you're irreplaceable, you're
Hmm.
indispensable.
Yeah.
And it's when you walk away that you realize, like, why did I think that?
Right.
Because they, like you say, they replace you like that, whether you're in a healthcare job or any job, really, because their system needs to keep going. And you're
Yep.
just one of the cogs that they just need to replace.
Yeah. And I think that in this process, like when Ray called me stupid and I realized I was going to quit and I was sort of grappling with that, I decided and sort of realized like, hey, I've got to choose self-preservation instead of self-sacrifice. And
Mm,
what I realized is for the 8 years before that, that I had been sacrificing my sanity, my schedule, my health at the altar of the healthcare system. And I was like, I love the OR, right? I love really sick patients. I love these things that I do. And to the person listening who's like, but I do enjoy my work, it is
mm,
possible to be super burned out beyond belief and still also kind of like what you do.
yeah.
Like those two things are not mutually exclusive. You can still love medicine or pharmacy or business or whatever it is that you're doing and be super burned out. It doesn't mean that you hate everything about everything. It just like burnout is simply what is being asked of you, the ongoing demands that are being put on you are more than you have the capability to provide. And they're more than you have the ability to cope with. And it's not you. It's the system that is asking you to do more and more and more. And when you say, hey, I need a little help, and they say, keep up the good work, and you're like, wait, no, I'm drowning. And they're like, keep up the good work. And you're like, I feel like we need more help over here. And they just say, like, great job, keep up the good work. You're like, wait, what, can they not hear me? Like, do they not know that I need help? No, they know. They just don't care.
Mm, yeah, that's exactly that's exactly the truth of the matter. And like you were talking about before, saving lives, everyone else's lives matter, but our own lives. It's like you get trained to think that your life doesn't matter. Everyone
Mm,
else's does, but yours
sure.
doesn't. And
Hmm.
if you don't serve, then you're not a good pharmacist, you're not a good PA, you're not a good
Sure.
whatever. Well, you're not really helpful if you're like half dead and burnt out
Sure.
either.
And
Yeah.
I cannot tell you the number of times that I have like left my own lunch in the cafeteria to go to a computer to put a diet order in for a patient. Or when I was doing urology, I was doing massive robotic surgery. I was running around putting all of these difficult catheters in bladders so that people could pee.
Mm.
And I would get to the end of a 12-hour day and I would be like, I don't think I've peed. And in fact, I don't even have to go because I didn't have time to drink anything. So, like, the whole hospital's bladders are empty but mine because I've been running around making sure everyone else could pee, but I didn't have time to pee. Like, it's like funny and also super sad if you
It
think
is.
about it.
Yeah. They're all bladders are empty and they're hydrated.
Yes, right. They have an IV. They're getting, I haven't had
Yeah.
time to drink anything.
You're
Yep. Don't
dehydrated
worry.
and
I'm
you have
fine.
no pee.
I
It,
probably
it
had like
is.
low level kidney failure every day when I went home because I had nothing to drink all day.
I mean, I just laugh because I used to sit in front of the computer and eat my lunch when
Yep.
really, I didn't need to do that.
Hmm.
Or if it's busy, then I just kind of forget my lunch or eat it halfway and I get called out
Sure.
somewhere. So it's yeah, the life of healthcare workers. We need to look at how we can make it more sustainable for them
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
the more people that get burnt out and leave, it means that's less people to take care of our patients and the people
Yeah.
that need help. So how did you come up with your passion? Because a lot of people, they, okay, they might go, okay, well, left my job,
Sure.
don't know what I'm going to do.
Hmm.
So, can you talk a bit about your journey into quitting your job and then pursuing your passion or discovering your
Yeah.
passion?
This sort of happened on accident because I was sort of when I came up for air, after quitting, I was looking for resources, right? I was like, who's talking about burnout? Who's telling people like, how do you recover from burnout? Like, what do you tell your next employer? Like, hey, I'm not weak or crazy, but I did get super burned out and need to take like a really, like a break from medicine because it was a kind of a jerk, like, how do you say this in a professional way? And I simply didn't find what I was looking for resource wise. And so when I quit my job, people were like, what? Like, first of all, how can you afford it? Which is where that money piece came from.
Mm.
And second of all, like, how did you know that you weren't being valued? Like, how did you know nothing was going to change? How did you know you had sort of done all that you could do and it was time to stop trying to save this sinking ship and just jump off and see how it went, like swimming in the ocean? So my podcast and my coaching and my teaching platform all was born from people inquiring about, like, they're like, oh, I couldn't quit my job because like we have too many bills. I was like, well, I can help you with that. Like, here's what we did to get in a position where our lifestyle was sustainable on either of our incomes. Like, here are the steps to do that. And then people were like, yeah, but like, I love my job. I just don't love that I'm seeing 35 patients a day and taking charts home at night. And I was like, okay, like, how can you negotiate for administrative time during the day? How can you adjust your template so you're seeing fewer patients? And a lot of what I've been focusing on lately is negotiation. And that comes in when you're asking for more money for the work that you're already doing, because everyone listening to this call deserves to be paid more than they're being paid for what they're doing, period. I don't care if you just got a raise, you're still underpaid and you deserve to make more than what you're making. That is true. It's just truth, especially if you identify as female, but just in general. And so with that negotiating, a lot of it is like making more money, but oftentimes, and especially with my female clients, we negotiate for less money, a lot actually, and better quality of life. Because most people, if you ask them, do you want 20,000 more dollars and to keep feeling like you're on this hamster wheel that you can't get off, and like you have a schedule that you hate and you never get to see your kids after school activities and you miss getting them on the bus, they're going to say like, no, what I want is Wednesdays off. What I want is to be home long enough in the morning that I see them with their eyes open before I go to work. Like, these are the things that you really want. And so if you can figure out what you're worth and really do the work to figure that out for yourself, then you can start to train the world how you expect to be treated. And so that's boundaries, right? That's negotiating for a better schedule. That's making sure that the people in your life are respecting you and treating you in a way that you deserve to be treated. But none of that happens if you still feel like, well, I'm not really worth, investing in. I'm not really worth as much as my male colleague. I'm not really worth as much as my husband's making. I'm not really worth as much as that leader is making in another department because I'm just me, right? We have this amazing way of discounting what we think we are worth. But if I gave you a profile and I said this was your friend of all the things that you're doing, all the ways that you're adding value, you would say, well, that girl needs a raise. Well, that girl is you. And yes, you do need to ask for a raise and less hours, right? Both. You can have all of the things. If you figure out what you're worth, you will be able to get them.
Yes, 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 yes. I just love everything you do and everything that you're saying right now. It makes me so happy.
It is a fun thing to sort of be on the other side. And I did not know this stuff early in my career. I did so many things wrong to get to the point where I can tell people like, here's what works well, because it doesn't work well. Like, getting hired for your first job, and when they ask you how much you want to make, you've got like a range written down in your notebook and you say the lower number because you just panic and you're like just surprised they're going to pay you money instead of making you pay tuition. And so then like I'm still, it's 10 years later and I'm still kicking myself for saying 82 instead of $85,000 in 2012. Like, it still pisses me off because I didn't know how much money the hospital was about to make on me. I didn't know what value I was going to add to my patients. I was just like, I can't believe they're going to pay me actual money to do this job that I'm just so excited about. Like, just because it's fun doesn't mean that it doesn't add value.
It's a little bit different over here. Our because I worked in a government hospital, so they have
Mm.
set rates, and you don't
Hmm.
really get to negotiate. Um, and yeah, some of the juniors get paid actually a lot more than, and is like nearly on par with someone that's a bit senior. So it's a bit crazy over here with the pay gaps, but it is the time and the value
Mm.
that is not protected. Like you don't feel valued when you're working in the
Yes.
system. And I don't know, it depends on the person. In government here is a little bit different. Some people overwork like I did, where I
Hmm.
worked, I'm supposed to work 8 hours and I would work, 12, 13 hours a day and get paid less per hour than,
Sure.
the junior assistant. But then there's people who are like, I'm out of here.
Yep.
Like, so I think people that really work hard do get burnt out, and it's really important that we get looked after. But I just find it interesting that I know the healthcare system is a little bit different with
Hmm.
wages and things like that.
And
Yeah.
I think a lot of people think if they're in a place where there are bands or it's based on your years of experience or your years at the organization, that they're like, well, that's what I get. That's what you get.
Mm,
But what if you had a better schedule?
yeah.
What if you really worked on your own beliefs and said like, hey, I'm going to put this work down when I'm 8 hours into my 8 hour shift. I'm going to hand it off to the night pharmacist and I'm going to walk away, and I'm not going to feel bad because that's what everybody else is doing, because that's what's expected of me. So you're
Mm,
still going above and beyond from a quality standpoint, but you're letting yourself off of the hook with these unreasonable expectations that you can't meet, because then you would get an immediate raise, right? Then you're working 2 to 5 hours less per day, and your quality of life just went through the roof. And now you're
yes.
just on par with what everyone's doing. Like, no one's going to fire you for
Yeah.
doing what they expect of you, right? Like, you
Yeah.
make this expectation, like, well, if I don't, if my inbox isn't at zero, if my tasks aren't done plus 50% more, then I'm not worthy. Like, no, it's okay to walk away when your
Yeah.
shift is over. It's okay to say to your boss, that project didn't get done today,
Yeah.
like, because I don't have the help that I asked you for, or whatever the situation is. Like,
Exactly. Yeah. A lot of times, like, I mean, for me, working the extra hours is me. Like,
yep.
my my boss was like, I guess they weren't expecting it, but
Hmm.
in a way they were. You feel those
Sure.
expectations, but it is you. Like at the end of the day, is working on your own expectations of self and what it all really means in the whole scheme of things. And I've
Hmm.
got a girlfriend right now who is trying to negotiate her schedule, but it just, I was talking to her, I'm like, you are the only person in this hospital that can do your job.
Mm. Which is a great position to negotiate from, right? They
Yeah.
need her.
Yes, that does the job and does it like to the quality that you do it. You can negotiate any freaking thing you want,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
And that it's the like feeling of, well, can I? Am I really, would they do it for me? And yeah, so it's just fascinating how we, like you say, discount ourselves and
Yeah.
are willing to just go, oh well, that's just how it is. If they don't let me, then okay.
Yeah,
If
it's
they,
fine. It's
yeah,
fine. It would be, it'd be great if they did. But, and before we even go to the table to negotiate, we start to sort of let ourselves down gently. Like, I understand if
yeah,
they don't. Like, stop understanding if they don't. Start getting pissed off if they say no. Like, if they say no, I'm going to be mad. Like, I'm going to be real pissed that they're
yeah,
not doing this, because then you negotiate differently. You're not preparing to settle, you're preparing to win, which is a very different mindset.
yeah. And when you win, they also win because you're in a better place. I think
Yeah.
sometimes we forget that if they say no, then it's okay. But it's a win-win situation for both parties because you'll be performing better at work because you
Yeah.
have all the time in the world. Now, I want to ask you if for people that are like, okay, well, this sounds amazing, Tracy. What's the first step? Like, if I want to sort out my finances, like, what do you
Mm.
tell people is the first step that they need to look at or do?
Well, I think setting financial goals is a great place to start, but you really can't decide where you're going to go unless you know where you are. So it's time to rip the band-aid off and stop pretending you only have that one credit card when you really have three, or that like you have no debt, but like it's okay because it's a 0% interest. Like stop those things that you qualify. You have to stop pretending that and really actually take an objective and as unemotional of a look as you can at your finances. What do you have in assets? What do you have in liabilities? So debts, things that you owe, your home mortgage, all of that. And when you look at those things, do you feel great about it? Or do you feel like, oh, I feel a little behind? And we shouldn't be comparing ourselves to others, but that feeling of behind or feeling of missing out, like everyone else is on vacation and I feel like we can barely make our bills. Like FOMO is actually a very powerful like motivator for you. So if you're thinking, everyone on my news feeds on vacation in the tropics right now. How this is true, I have absolutely no idea. Why is no one else working? But it's always happens like that. Everyone's having babies, everyone's getting married, everyone's on vacation. I'm like, who is working other than me? It's just me. But when you're thinking that and you're thinking, gosh, next year, I really wish we could go on a vacation that doesn't follow us home in the form of a credit card bill, like plan for something fun while you plan for a lot of unfun, because like paying off debt is not that sexy, right? Paying off debt, for experiences that you had 2 years ago, like that's actually zero fun whatsoever. But think about what you can do if you don't have that payment next year. So kind of incentivize kind of figuring it out. Start with something super small, like, oh, I want to have an extra $1,000 in our emergency fund by 2 months from now, a small thing that you can celebrate winning, and then work up to like, oh, that $100,000 student loan. Like, don't start with that. You'll feel, disappointed before you even start.
I want to jump into boundaries now because yes, you've left your job, but now you're doing coaching, podcasts,
No, I
and all
work all
them.
the time.
So, how do you fit that into your life without then getting back in those patterns of overworking?
Yeah, so I think that people who are achievers, people who tend to burn out, tend to have that habit and they take it with them, right? They don't leave it at that job that they quit. They don't leave it in that, career. They take it with them. So unless we fix that, we will end up unemployed and burned out from housework. We will end up, taking on a new job and burned out from still having poor boundaries. So I have had to really tell myself that like life is not a race. Like I was the kid that like I didn't just want 100 on a math test. I wanted 100 on a math test and to turn it in first because that somehow mattered to me. That like I was like I got to get them all right, but I also have to get them faster than Alice, right? Like I have to get them all right first, which math is not a race. Life is not a race, right? There's no like first prize for life. Like, oh, you finished first. Like that's actually bad, right? That's death. That's like early death. That's not what we're looking to do here. So I had to really examine like, why do you feel like you have to, if you're going to build an empire and you're going to coach all the people and you're going to start a podcast that's going to get hundreds of thousands of downloads, like it does not have to be by Tuesday, right? Like that's an unreasonable expectation. I know, like, because that would feel amazing, right? Like, oh, it was like overnight success after 10 years of work, right? So for me, I had to really block my schedule. So like if my kids are home and not yet on the bus, I actually have in my Google Calendar, like spend time with kids, get them on the bus. And it's like an hour and a half long appointment. Someone looks to schedule a meeting with me, they can't do it until 9 a.m. my time because then my kids have gotten on the bus and I have had 25 minutes to eat and pee and maybe look presentable, maybe not, depending on any given day. But if I don't block that out, like someone will schedule a podcast interview and then I will be trying to be both the best mom for my kids while simultaneously getting them to be quiet and get on the bus and showing up well for a podcast interview. And you cannot do both of those things well simultaneously. Like, no, you could do both of them like half-assed, not great, but you can't do both well at the same time.
Yep. Totally get where you're coming from in all of the things like you said about wanting things achieved yesterday or,
Yesterday.
yeah,
It's a great time
yesterday.
to have accomplished a goal.
Yeah.
Yesterday.
Or
Feels
10
good.
years ago, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. You've really honed in and really put up the boundaries to create the lifestyle that you want, especially coming from that overachieving personality where you just want to do all the things right now.
Mhm.
So that's really important. So, because I know right now, I was asking you before we jumped on, what time is it? And you're like, oh, it's around dinner time.
Yes.
So then how does that kind of all work with the flow of things and creating those boundaries? Like with I assume your kids will be home right now because it's like a
They're
Saturday.
home.
Yeah.
They're home. Yeah.
Yeah.
So my kids are old enough. My youngest is 4, but they're generally old enough to understand. Like, dad's on a call, mom is working, and so I spent the whole day with my kids. I skied with them. We went to a kids basketball game. We went to a kids lacrosse game. I made cookies. We did a lasagna, which is what they're eating for dinner. And I miss dinner super rarely, but when I say, hey, I'm gonna go get on a podcast, like my boys pick up their football and they put it away because they know that they can't be loud and yelling while I'm recording. And so they know that if they come to that door and this ring light is on, they do not knock, they don't wave, they pretend I don't exist because they know that I'm doing something. If they come to that door and this ring light is not on and I'm sitting at my desk and I'm working, they are welcome to come in. And so I have taught them that even like sometimes I'll record on a weeknight and it'll be their bedtime and their bedroom is like near my studio. They'll walk by and I just like, if I haven't hit record yet, I'll wave to them. If not, I pretend they don't exist. Like I can hear them, but I pretend they don't exist because I am not in mom mode right now and they are safe and someone is responsible for them. Like they're fine. They don't need me right now. So I have had to be very diligent about like when I book a podcast, I put it on the calendar and I tell my husband like, hey, between 6 and 7, I am not home. Like I'm
Mm.
home, but I'm not
Mm.
home. I'm not
Yeah.
available. And I am still working clinically as a PA. So I have like a day job where I go to the office. And so this year I dropped my hours, which has been really great because I've had more time to really pour into this thing that sets my soul on fire. But also when I'm at the office and I'm in clinic and I'm taking care of patients, I'm not on Instagram, like talking to coaching clients. I am at work. And so I listened to this one influencer who just says like, I have to be planted where my feet are. And that to me has been a very centering thing because
Mm.
like I can physically be on this call with you and be worrying about a patient I saw yesterday or be worrying about my kids upstairs or whatever. But if I just remember like, where are your feet? Like, what are you supposed to be doing right now? And that has really helped me to not be, because I'll be worried about something that hasn't happened and is never going to happen, or replaying something that happened in the past, which is sort of the opposite of mindfulness, like
Mm.
being worrying about the future or perseverating on the past, but being in the moment, which is not easy for me at all. This is like a work in progress. My mind will often wander forward and backward, and just being where my feet are planted. The other thing, as like a type A, like achieving woman, has been when I look my calendar for the week, or when I look at my calendar for the day, or when I answer an email and someone says like, hey, are you free this day at this time? And I look at it and I'll look at the space on the calendar, and sometimes the space is white, but it's like, oh, the hour that I have between work and getting a kid to a doctor's appointment. So like it's white, but like, how would that feel? To be rushing out of work to get her for the allergist and be trying to be on a call in that 45-minute window. And if your
Mm.
patients run late, your call is going to be like, nope, wouldn't feel good. And so like, I will be like, how's February? Like I have no problem. Like we waited months to be able to do
Mm.
this at a time that worked for both of us, but there's no rush. Those things are going to happen when they're going to happen. And if someone is like, listen, I need you to, this is your one opportunity to work with me and it has to be by Tuesday, like, well, sorry. Like I
Mm.
feel not bad about that at all. Like some better opportunities around the corner with someone who's not going to pressure me to bend my boundaries to be able to work with them. Like, no, It's not worth it to me. That hour is not productive time, but me being able to get my kid out of school and not be stressed and get her to the doctor and talk to her about her day is worth more than a sponsorship call for a podcast person. Like, it's just worth more. And it's not actually, right? Like, it doesn't actually generate revenue, and it doesn't actually, like, it's not a paying client. But for me, how that day would feel and how I feel when my head hits the pillow on that day when I say no to the call versus a day when I just like shoehorn it in and try to do more. Like, at the end of that day, I'm wiped out and I feel badly and I regret the decision versus like, hey, we had time and we like got an ice cream on the way to the allergist. And like, she told me about her new boyfriend because she's 4. So, like, she told me something and I looked her in the eye and I had a moment with her. Like, that moment is priceless. It's not revenue generating, and that is okay.
Oh, I just love this, this conversation around boundaries and how you put it all in place, because it's so important, especially for people that do work at home, or even like you say, you go to the office, but there are people who are who are physically at the office but not there.
Yeah.
So there's the importance of living in the moment. And I'm a work in progress. I don't know if there's anyone that is like always in the moment. I haven't met anyone like that. I think it's just like having that awareness and catching ourselves when it does happen, that we're, oh, why am I thinking about that? Let's bring it back. Yeah. And I love that you have taught your kids about, this is when mummy's not free, you guys cannot come in. It's so important. And I think as mums, a lot of times we're like, our kids are our life and they can consume and take everything from us, but mummy needs their time, whether it's for, recording a podcast or even that 5 minutes of me time where mummy's like, I just need that quiet time. Let me just walk off for 5 minutes. So I love that you've been able to teach your kids that, and that they just know.
And I also want to raise kids who are adults who know that they are worthy of having boundaries. Yes. Like, so like if one of my kids is upset and they're like, I don't want you to hug me, like I need space, like please respect that. Like, yes, good. Like, I want you to be an adult who says to someone like, you're too close. Like, I don't want you in my face. Or like, no, on Tuesday nights I go out with my wife, so I can't go to poker night, or whatever it is. Yeah. I want them to know like they are worth it. They are worthy of boundaries. They are worth what they need, and they don't have to justify that in any way. So like, to me, the mom who's like sacrificing herself, what she's teaching her kids is they're not worthy of time, that they're not worthy of respect, that they're not worthy of their own space and what they need, because that's what she's modeling for them. And I don't want to raise kids. My mom was amazing at that. Like, my mom is the queen of the hobbies. Like, right now, she's probably like practicing her French horn or playing pickleball or doing something. And I never felt like I felt like my mom was always the main character in her own life, and I was a supporting character, but I got to be the main character in my own life. So like, I didn't need to be the main character in my mom's story. Like, she got to be this person who was fully formed on her own with interests and like a unique personality. And I just happened to be raised by her. Like, I wasn't, and now I get to be the main character in my story with kids who came and were such a blessing and hung out at her house for 18 years and then left and went out into the world to do their own damn thing. It's so fun.
I love that. I love that so much. And yes, modeling what we want them to learn as well is so important. We think the sacrificing everything for them is healthy, but it's actually not. Yeah. And I love that, I wanted to mention this as you was talking about boundaries and talking to sponsors, but, time with my child is more important. I remember sending you an email and I got this autoresponder from you. And I was like, that is a freaking awesome autoresponder, and I do need to copy it because
That has gotten such positive feedback. No one, zero people have been mad. So to the people listening, it says like, I'm currently like walking the walk and I'm not in my inbox, and I check my email once a week on a Monday, and I will get back to you on Monday. If this is an emergency and you have my cell phone number, call me. If it's an emergency and you don't have my cell phone number, it's probably not worth calling me about. Like, talk to you later. And I only check my email on Monday. And everyone's like, well, what if someone sends you something time sensitive? I'm like, well, then they've been warned, right? They're not expecting a response because I told them I'm not in my inbox until Monday.
yeah, so I loved it. I'm like, that is the best autoresponder I have ever seen. So Tracy does definitely walk her talk.
I'm
So,
trying.
yeah, we are all trying our best, but you've set up yourself for success anyway.
Yeah, I think having a system that automatically says no to some things or automatically filters out who even gets access to you, it's already going to be easier to have firm boundaries if you've warned people, right? Like if you tell people, I am not at your beck and call. Like, yes, I am your coach, but I answer emails like once a week. This is the access that you have to me. Then they're not surprised. They're not like, I think I'm getting ignored. Like, nope. This is what we talked about. These were the boundaries. You knew this going in. I am not your servant, right? I am available when I'm available. And when I'm not, like, tough luck. No one's going to die. You're fine.
Yeah.
You can say,
Yeah, that's what I say. No one's going to die.
this is not life or death.
Yeah. So I want to ask you, I mean, for people that are listening right now and they're like, oh, this is exactly what I'm looking for. Like everything that Tracy says resonates so much because I'm in that space where I'm like, I'm so burnt out and I need to create boundaries and all the things. And they're like, but I can't do it. I mean, Tracy can do it, but I can't do it. How can you help? Well, what's some advice that you can give someone to challenge that limiting belief that they can't?
Yeah. So to the person who thinks like that sounds great for you because you are already good at this and you already know how to set boundaries, but it simply wouldn't work for me. If you're not worthy of self-care, if you are not worthy of putting up boundaries to keep you in your life in a way that feels good, who is? Like, look around your life. Who matters more to you than you do? And if you're a parent, this can be a really hard exercise because you can say like, but of course I love them more, but of course they matter more. But do they? Because if you aren't showing up well for you, you cannot show up well for other people. So you are the main character of your own story. You are worthy of a life that is beyond your wildest dreams, but only if you think you are, only if you start to act like you are, only if you start to build that life, is that life going to become a reality. And that starts with you knowing that you are worthy of way more, period. Way more, whatever it is that you're craving exists on the other side of boundaries and hard conversations, because boundaries put up walls to keep up rude people out of our lives. And you have to tell that rude person they're not allowed to do the thing. They're not allowed to capitalize your time. They're not allowed to come into your yard. They're not allowed to let their dog poop on your yard. Whatever it is, you have to say to them, hey, Joe, you've been doing this thing and that's not going to fly anymore. And that conversation is terrifying. Like, it'll make your pit sweat. Like, you'll be like, this is the one I'm dreading, right? I told all the other people because I wanted to tell Joe last because he terrifies me. Well, unless or until you tell him that this is the way, is only a figment of your imagination. So you have to be, know that you're worthy. You have to build a boundary, and then you have to tell people about it, because if it only exists in your mind, it's not really a boundary. It's just the idea of a boundary.
Yes, thank you for that. That's such great advice for anyone that's listening who's going, I can't do this. And Tracy's just told you that you can. And the first step is really believe that, willingness to believe that you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that
Thank
you're a
you.
beginner. So, like, it's going to be hard at first. Like, that's just true. Give yourself permission to be a rookie at building boundaries, especially if you're a recovering people pleaser who's been saying yes to everything for 40 years. Like, it's not going to happen overnight. Like, you have to practice, like, small boundaries. Like, no kids, shoes go in the shoe bin. Well, there's a place to start, right? Like, just start with something small with someone who you can actually control and then build to the bigger stuff.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, baby steps all the way. Coming from a recovering people pleaser that always says yes to people. Even after being able to go do all the healing and set boundaries, sometimes it's still hard because there might be some
Mm,
situations where you're like, oh, maybe I should, or,
mm.
sometimes things come up, but and it's okay if sometimes you do give a leeway. You don't have
Yes.
to be, that tough person all the time. If it
That's called
doesn't,
being a human, is
yes.
like, in the situation saying why. And I think a really powerful exercise if you're doing that, if you've been working on this and you've been saying no and you've been feeling good about it, and then a situation crops up and you say like, well, maybe I should. I think a really great question to ask yourself if you're starting to think maybe I should is, why do I feel like that? Is
Mm,
it really something that is the best? Like, this is the exception and I'm going to do it? Or is this me slipping into, well, maybe I should because that person's needs are more important than mine? They're not.
yeah. 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 Their needs are never more important than yours. Yeah.
And that is a hard pill to swallow when you've been prioritizing everyone else's needs over yours. And it is a little scratchy and it's not going to feel great. Like, my husband will tell you that in the last 5 years, like, sometimes he's like, your personal development is actually a little bit annoying. Like, because I will, because I will say like, you've been doing this thing since the day that we met and I actually hate it. And he's like, what? Like, that's rude. I'm like, well, I've actually hated it the whole time, but I just got up the nerve to tell you. And now I'm doing, now. And they're like, oh, okay, like, it's a little bit, I think it's annoying to be married to someone who's obsessed with personal development because, like, I'm constantly like dragging him along with me. I'm like making our relationship mature with like these like personal development things. And he's like, it actually was kind of nice when you said nothing and did everything that I wanted. I was like, yeah, I'm sure it was, but it was terrible for me. So we're not going back. Not
I
going
love
back.
it. I love that so much. I could talk to you all day, but I'm just looking at the time. So, before we wrap up, is there anything any last things that you want to say to our audience before we wrap up?
So the thing that it has taken me 30 plus years and one major crisis to realize is I am worthy, and that is the end of that sentence. You don't have to say I am worthy because of what I do or who I serve or how I show up in the world. You are worthy of love, respect, and this amazing life simply because you exist and you are living your life. You don't have to earn that worthiness. You don't have to do one single thing that is productive or shows up in the world in any way to serve anyone else. You are worthy, period. And I wish I had learned that 33 and a half years ago. But today is the day, if you are listening and you are like, that sounds amazing, but I don't really feel that worthy. Like, you are. And it's not because of what you do, it's just because you exist, period.
Thank you for those words of wisdom. So needed. Tracy, thank you so much for spending your time with us today and sharing your love and wisdom. If people want to find out more about you or how they can work with you, where's the best place to go?
So I love to hang out on Instagram. I'm at Mrs. Tracy Bingaman there. My website is tracybingaman.com. And if you are a podcast listener and this resonated with you, my show is called The PA is In, like the doctor is in, but the PA is in. You can find it anywhere that you listen to podcasts. I talk a lot about PA content, but I also talk a lot about you protecting your time, being wise with your money, and just having this energy that is abundant and overflowing so that you can share it well with those around you. So I'd love to have you join us over there.
Yeah, so necessary, your works. Thank you so much once again. It's been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you for having me. This has been a blast.